gonna continue on springs a bit. I've made some videos on this, but I'll make another to get the spring in. And we do have those. Those are available through esaabparts.com. But Matt Nickley and Matt Nickley and Anthony, they can get access to those springs for you. But I've got this top one in, and the problem you get into is if you're replacing the spring and taking it out of the tool, the spring is going to be too tall, and you're not going to be able to get the tool around it enough to compress it enough to get it in the hole. Now I'm fortunate to have one of these machines one of these tools sitting here where I can just throw the spring in there and compress it down in order to get the Saab special tool on. But like a lot of things Saab did, it's a process, right? The simple way is not the simple way. So instead of just being able to use this tool, you've got to first compress the spring. So I had made myself a long rod and some nuts and some spacers. That's what I use sometimes to compress the spring first, because you've got to try to get the spring compressor on. And the bottom piece goes in, it goes on the inside, and then the top piece goes on the outside. The other thing I do is I mark where my beginning or my little cutaway is here that's going to go on that bottom piece. I'll grab that, because what happens is you get it all in there and the spring's still got pressure on it, and then you've got to roll the spring, 180, 240 degrees, whatever, to get it to line up with this part here. So this is the outside of my spring, and I've marked it with marks, so I know it's my outside. And then I line up that cut with the cutaway, here on the spring, because there's where the spring is cut and going to match in. So now I can go ahead and get all my tooling in. So we'll see if we can't get it together and come back on. So I've got the tool, the top piece is here, the flat ground away part of the spring goes up, and again the notched area goes down and into my plate here, and these go with the tapered side in. I always forget and have to look, and then I've pretty well got pressure off of the tool now. But this is the special tool Saab had. It uses, of all things, a crankshaft bearing. So this one was frozen. That was in that. That's an old rusty tool someone donated to the museum. Anyway, that's the good thing about some of these Chinese bearings I take out of rebuilt cranks is they'll probably work for this just fine. So that's where I use my Chinese bearing. But another thing that's really handy is having one of these that's got the swivel head on it, because there's a lot of times you don't have a straight push, and these are really. That's, I just said, that's probably about 12 inches or so. That's perfect size, and because you got to come up into the underneath through the brake and everything. I'll kind of show you when you're taking everything off. You've got your bracketry in here, and you've got to try to come up in, and this swivel is a lifesaver. So highly recommend that. But that's just a couple things you can do. So one way or another, you got to compress the spring down far enough to get the tool on, because it would have made no sense for Saab to make those bolts longer and not need two tools to do one job. But you know what? They did everything the hard way. So just another example. But if you've got some way to compress it, whether you use a big piece of ready rod, whatever, you'll come out just fine. Tom Downey from the Saab Museum in Sturgis, South Dakota, signing off.